Hello and welcome to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. On this episode, I will spend the first half of my broadcast speaking about the ongoing aerial assault that is happening in our atmospheres, I would say in our upper atmospheres of Earth, but is now affecting the lower levels of the atmosphere where humans live and breathe. And the enormous implications of these realizations. And also in the second half, I will speak to you more about transforming into being a light eater. Thank you. Brief pause. Okay, so first up, last week I devoted almost the entire broadcast to speaking about my personal experiences breathing in what has been sprayed in the sky over the past 2 months. And rather than rehash the entire thing, first of all, let me also introduce myself. My name is Aurora. I am a galactic walk-in. I am not the original inhabitant of this physical human form. I came into this physical form and have been living this life as Aurora since October 8th, 2001. I have transformed this container, this biological, organic, multicellular container, to house my consciousness, which is an abstract consciousness. And that had meant that the cells of this body had to transform. And the transformative tool that I used and the portal through which I transferred my consciousness is called the flying rainbow lasagna. This shape is a shape I invented, and it is considered to be a hyper-torus, or a higher dimensional torus, or the shape that happens when you take a donut, which is a torus shape, a toroid, and you add another dimension, and in so doing add an additional degree of freedom to that shape. So if you speak math, I often use the shorthand. What cube is to tesseract is what torus is to hypertorus. So all of that as explanation for who I am and what I'm here doing. I am here sharing the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna with not only the intellectual aspect of your mind or your consciousness, also with the cellular aspect of your body. Because I like to say we are all like musicians in a symphony, and the notes that one musician is playing are certainly affecting the other musicians in the symphony. And my notes, or the dance movements that my genetic material is making, are quite unique, and they are affecting everyone else. So I am like a template or an example of what you can do with your genes if you start to move them in a higher dimensional state. All of this matters, and I've been recording weekly broadcasts here on Birth of a New Dimension in preparation for Earth's surface human consciousness, preparing the garden, quote unquote, so we can plant the seeds of new ideas and have new experiences grow from those seeds. So part of what I've been speaking about is the concept of who is out there? Let's talk about intelligence. Who is really out there? And I've spoken extensively about beings who use technology as opposed to beings who do not have to use technology. And let me also just clarify, if this is the first time you're coming to my broadcasts, I do not have a transhumanist agenda, and pretty much everything that I write and teach about and speak about is all to say that you have all of the tools with you already. You don't need anything extra in order to perform this process of ascension. Your personal ascension of consciousness, raising the vibration of both your awareness and your physical container until you inhabit the next highest level of the realms of density of what is possible. And at the same time, the planet, we're having planetary ascension. So your individual ascension and the raising of your individuated consciousness into a higher realm is concomitant with the journey of the planet that is also raising her consciousness and entering into a higher realm. All of this matters as I begin to tell you about what is being sprayed in the upper atmospheres. So last week, I related my journey extensively. Over the past 10 years, chemtrails have been sprayed in the air. Let us first be impeccable with our language. So a contrail condensation trail as opposed to a chemtrail, chemical aerosol trail. So the difference is a contrail is made merely of water vapor, and they have existed for a very long time, and they dissipate quite quickly, and they do not leave a milky haze in the sky. They also, when they are emitted, regular contrails, there is a gap behind the engines. The jet engines would melt any ice crystals that are directly behind the engines. Therefore, regular contrails, there is a gap of what is being emitted from the plane. Chemtrails, or these chemical aerosols, however, are quite different. So they are different in that they are persistent. The white line that is being sprayed across the sky can exist for many minutes or even hours and tends to dissipate and stay in the high stratosphere and become a thin grayish chemical haze. You can also tell it's a chemical aerosol if you're able to get a close-up view of the craft emitting it, and if there is no gap between the engines and what is being emitted. Also, when it is a chemical aerosol, you might feel symptoms like your eyes burning, your nose burning, the back of your throat burning. You might sneeze. You might later have congestion in your chest, or feel coughing, or if you're susceptible to bronchitis or asthma, have bronchitis or asthma flare-ups later. So this was my particular experience, that up until this point in the year, March 15th of 2016, I observed with my eyes the existence of the persistent aerosol trails and did not, let's say, focus my attention on them as a crisis or an emergent or emergency situation, because I really was not feeling symptoms. And previous to this, the nanoparticles that have been sprayed, these are metallic nanoparticles, have mostly remained at the higher levels of the stratosphere. They've affected some people who are very chemically sensitive, but mostly this has been what I jokingly refer to as a slow kill project, slow kill poison. But very recently, the formula of what is being sprayed has changed, and it's changed intentionally so that heavier than air dispersants are now mixed in with the metallic particles, causing the entire mixture to come down to lower levels of the atmosphere where humans actually breathe it. And when those dispersants are added, I can now sense them. It smells to me sometimes like burnt rubber, or like what it smells like in an automotive supply store where they sell auto tires, that very petroleum-based smell. I've also smelled a powdery, noxious smell. I can also tell in my sinuses when my nose feels abnormally dry. It does not make mucus in my nose. This is also how you can delineate between pollen, being exposed to pollen. When you're exposed to pollen, your eyes might run and your nose might run, and they might feel itchy and red and irritated. However, when I have been exposed to chemicals like glass paint, it made my eyes burn, it made my nose burn, but it did not make my mucous membranes actually run. It didn't make my nose run. So this is how I'm understanding what I've been experiencing. Last week, the assault was so bad that even in my own home, I wore a VOC respirator. Those initials stand for volatile organic compound. And these are the type of respirators that filter out paint fumes as well as nanoparticles. And I also went extensively into the symptoms that I experienced last week in the broadcast of muscle weakness. And this is different than tiredness, like saying, I'm sleepy, I want to go take a nap. This is the sense of feeling more difficulty lifting your elbows to the levels of your shoulders, or being able to grip something like to pick up a jar or open a jar, or being able to do a deep knee bend and then stand up out of a chair without assistance. All of these things are about how well are your muscles working, and I could sense that my muscles were really laboring, and all of this was concomitant with exposure to toxins, specifically heavy metals, all right? So I began to take a lot of chlorella after I did my research, and I spoke about this on the broadcast last week because it's all about what can we do to protect ourselves, but I didn't have all of the information to share with you. So I began to take chlorella, and I still highly recommend that if you can get organic, open cell or broken cell chlorella. This, and I'll get into the second half of the broadcast why this is so essential and very good to use, but basically this helps to rid your body of the excessive heavy metals that we are now all being exposed to simply by breathing in the atmosphere. Now, before I get into chlorella, let me share more of my journey. So I began to do a lot of research, and I started to come across video evidence and photographic evidence that people have been taking of the craft that are in the sky that are emitting the persistent aerosols. And one of the most telling features is that sometimes it appears that there is, quote unquote, no plane emitting the spray. So first I give you information. I say, hey, this is a regular contrail. You can see that it is there's a gap behind the engine. It dissipates quite quickly. Then I say, sometimes you can tell it's a chemtrail because there's no gap and it's spraying directly out behind the plane. And now I'm telling you that most recently, within this past year, people have been videoing evidence of what cannot be described as airplanes. They can be described as no plane, something that is not there, an area of invisibility in the sky, emitting a thick, white, persistent aerosol. All right. Now, I will share links to these videos. Some of them are only up on YouTube, on Facebook rather, so I only have Facebook links to share. Some of them are on YouTube. I will share all of these links on the Birth of a New Dimension Facebook page and also on the @Birth Dimension Twitter feeds so that you can try and see them, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 10 million words. These videos started me down the path of investigation and understanding that what we are looking at is not, these are not ordinary planes, and that what you're seeing with your naked eye might not be what is actually there. So, I actually took a brief pause just now in recording so that I could jump up with my digital camera and take a picture of a craft that was flying overhead, because I do this now because what I have realized from my experiences that I'll tell you just a little bit more, what I'm seeing and what most of us are probably seeing with the naked eye is not what's actually there. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about the chemical constituents of the persistent aerosol trails. Aluminum, strontium, and barium. These are nano microscopic, smaller than micro, nanoscopic materials, and they're known to be used in holographic projections. Okay? There's science behind this. This is not madness. This is not random. There's a reason why I'm telling you all of this. So it is my understanding so far that I'm putting things together. There are certain flights that fly in the high stratosphere, above 30,000 feet. And this has been going on for a long time. Those flights emit coatings of nanoparticles that are persistent, and they spread out and they hang in the air and they stay in the sky. And it is my understanding, and like growing understanding, that those particles are part of the cloaking mechanism or the disguise that the crafts are wearing that are actually spraying these aerosols. So yesterday was the first day that I got out my digital camera. It is a 12 megapixel camera with a 3 times optical zoom. And when I heard some of these flights are very high and it's too high for me to hear, and then I'm too late to actually catch what's being emitted. However, there was one that went over my home that was relatively low and I could hear it, and I grabbed my camera quick enough to get a couple of pictures. Now I'll relate to you my eyewitness experience. My eye saw a plane. I took pictures with my camera, and when I got inside, and I have to kind of upload them to my better computer and look at them on a larger screen, my photographic evidence showed me that there was no plane. I saw with my eye a shiny silver plane. In the pictures, there is no shiny silver plane. There is nothing. There's nothingness there. And more than that, this is from yesterday, the really interesting thing is what is visible there. There are visible several different types of tiny specks. Now, it becomes difficult to share it on Facebook because Facebook uses a photo compression algorithm. That means that every time you share your original photograph, it loses some amount of quality as soon as it goes into Facebook. So these tiny little dots, it is very difficult to see once they go through that image compression. So I will describe to you with my words. Some of these dots look luminous. They look like a spot of pure light, and they have an entire ring of darkness around it, kind of the way that a flash bulb would look on a picture, or the way that the sun's disk would look on a picture. Some of these little specks look opaque, and they're much more difficult to see. What I have to do is, download my photographic image that is already zoomed in 3 times, and then zoom in again using a photo editing program to be able to see them. If it weren't for the bright specks, I would not be able to even see the opaque specks. And the opaque specks look to me like they are made out of mass, a material that can cast a shadow, and they look to me like they are spherical in their shape. Like there is a highlight, there is a grayish area, and there is a darker underside. So I started to see in my photographs of yesterday that not only do the bright sparks move around in the photographic frame. So let's say if I take 3 successive images, the bright sparks move around in a very fast motion. They're not moving in a linear motion. And also that they tended to be standing next to or pointing out or drawing attention to the dull specks that seem to be made of matter. So it took me a little while to think about all of this. Brief pause while I save my work. Took me a little while to think about all of this because, of course, I've been teaching on this broadcast for many, many weeks now, and the concept of the idea that there are different space races, some of whom are malevolent and use technology and are not really that sophisticated or advanced in their own consciousness, and some space races do not use technology. As I've been teaching you, in order to ascend, all you really need are your birthday suit, what you were born here with, your physical container, your consciousness, your spirit, your soul, your connection to the planet, your connection to the divine source of consciousness and your creative life force energy. Literally, this is not a transhumanist idea. Transhumanism says that in order to reach your full potential, you need something extra, a microchip, a metal filament, some kind of nanoparticle, something that you don't already have and that isn't part of the living biological, what we would term the natural realm, okay? And that pretty much what we are looking at in terms of non-terrestrial life is a struggle between these two divergent approaches. And I've described in other broadcasts extensively why these two different space races exist. And I don't mean to just be dualistic. There's a whole spectrum of beings whom exist up there. And these are just two, generalized categories because I'm trying to relate to you that I've been feeling a great deal of frustration as I've been noticing that humanity is being assaulted by an aerial bombardment of chemical and biological contaminants. And the biological contaminants I spoke about last week as being a mycoplasm or an infectious particle similar to a virus crossed with a bacterium but with no cell wall. And these are artificially manufactured. These are engineered. We're talking about biological warfare. I didn't yet last week have the information to tell you who is behind all of this, of course, until I started to do my research. So the first thing is everybody needs to get a decent digital camera with an optical zoom, preferably use a tripod, even though most of the time it's too cumbersome to actually do it. But your cell phone probably doesn't have enough clarity in order to be able to capture the details. So if you can, capture some really close-up images of what is actually emitting the spray. And here's what you should also look for. I've noticed in my photographs, there is usually a dull speck, or what I'm referring to as a metallic orb, in front of what is the craft that is spraying. And there are usually several of them following behind in the wake, in the white trail afterwards. And even after the craft that is spraying has gone by out of your sight, if you take pictures of the the aerosol trail as it's in the air, I've still been able to find little traces of those dull specks. And as I said, I don't know if you will see bright specks, because I do not know if this is an effort that is going on all along. But basically, I called out in frustration to the benevolent higher dimensional creatures, and I said, myself and the biosphere and everyone who is on Earth is really suffering under this aerial assault. We could use some help here, and wouldn't it be wonderful to get help from the even more sophisticated races that are up there that don't use technology? And so I'm sharing with you, I think that is what I am perceiving. I've been taking pictures for the past couple of days and blowing them up and looking at them, and I see bright sparks that are not random, and they are not merely lens flare, and they have different colors in them. And so I can identify which one is which, and they move around in the frames, and faster than an ordinary craft would be able to be. And wherever there is a bright spark, there is one of these dull, tiny metallic orbs, and it would be almost impossible for me to find the little metallic orbs if they weren't standing next to a bright spot. So I am filling in the blanks, the narrative structure here, and envisioning that there actually are several different, we could call them teams, and that team Bright Spark is helping to point out the other tiny craft that are very, very difficult to perceive. I wish I had an even better camera. And my whole point about the barium, strontium, aluminum particles being part of a holographic screen, I believe that these little tiny dull specks are following in the wake of the aerosol sprayer and moving in front of the aerosol sprayer as part of the deception, as part of a screen or a moving illusion that is being held up so that people on the ground cannot actually see what is going on. So part of it is your presumptions, the cognitive dissonance. People cannot even believe that there could be a massive planetary-wide program for aerosol spraying. It's too cumbersome, it's too unlikely, it's too expensive, it couldn't even be going on. This is what your rational mind tells you. However, if you actually look without technological assistance, your rational mind is being exposed to mind control. So now we have to get into what else is in these particles beyond their mere nano quality. And their nano quality means that when you breathe them in, they're able to effectively enter your bloodstream and go to places in your neurology like your brain. And ordinarily this would be just considered poison, like if you put any particle in your brain that's not supposed to be there, it's just poison. There's the concept here, though, that these particles are part of a system of mind control, and that there are also biological contaminants that are being sprayed, the mycoplasm. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the work of Harold Klautz-Vella and his explanation of black goo. I would say don't watch his videos, don't delve, don't go there, because Harold has been assimilated. So Harold is a German researcher, and he was speaking a lot about what he called black goo. And this is an exotic substance that is semi-alive. It could be considered the source of some of this artificial intelligence. And that is what it is like a blended organism blended with technology that is malevolent and artificially created, and it's been being sprayed as part of these aerial sprays in order to effectively enter into your neurology and enter into your bloodstream and begin to control your mind. And part of it is controlling your perception of what you even see in the sky. This is so absolutely crucial to recognize that this is going on. I am here, I'm not pretending that I am immune. I'm a walk-in, and I use a human vehicle, and I'm being exposed to the same toxins that all of you guys are, and the same difficulties. And as I told you in my first experience, this was just yesterday, I saw with my physical eye a plane. When I took the pictures, there was no plane there. And the only reason I started taking pictures with my better camera and zooming in is because I saw pictures that other people had taken that made me say, maybe this is what's going on. When you see a very, very high, distant, persistent aerosol trail being sprayed, a lot of the time with the naked eye, it is too far to even be able to see. And probably your rational mind tells yourself, oh, that's an airplane up there spraying that out. And even if you are, quote unquote, a conspiracy-minded person who is able to grapple with your cognitive dissonance and recognize that there is a technological object that is spraying something that is not merely water vapor, it might be just a little bit too much for you to actually consider that this is non-earthly technology. And I am here in this broadcast today to tell you and just lay it out there so we can have this conversation. And I am not afraid to say this. A lot of people are afraid of being labeled as insane. And believe me, I expect that there will be a whole campaign waged against people who see clearly and have the guts to speak about it, that they are mentally ill, that this is what has been going on with the idea of Morgellons, Morgellons. Morgellons disease has been labeled as a mental illness of people who believe they have nano self-assembling fibers in their body growing out of their body. And that would be really, really easy as an explanation. However, I've also seen videos, which are worth more than 1,000,000 words, of nanofibers growing out of a computer keyboard. This is reportage. Of course, you're not seeing it, but I saw this video posted firsthand on Facebook of a person who went away. They live in Germany. Notice a lot of this is happening in Germany. They went away for 30 days. When they got back to their apartment, they found these fibers literally growing out of their computer keyboard. And they took videos of it to show examples of this. And they also showed examples of a piece of bacon that they had saved, tacked to the wall for a year, that there were fibers growing out of the piece of bacon, because this person is an aware person and they're clearly testing their environment to see what's up there, what's out there, what's in there. So the idea is that these aren't just stupid particles, that they are intelligently directed particles that have the capacity, when they are exposed to an energy source like the electrostatic charge on your computer keyboard, they can assemble themselves into nanofibers and even begin to form networks as a type of artificial consciousness, like an artificial neurology. Brief pause. So now it is necessary to lay out all of the elements of this puzzle. Private planes and military planes are all being used, and unidentified craft are all being used in order to spray persistent aerosol contaminants of not only nanoparticles, but biological contaminants and things that we would consider to be a cross between the two. And these affect one's capacity to see and think clearly and think your own thoughts. Now I'm going to bring your memory back to about roughly 1 year ago. There was a quote-unquote viral meme that went around on Facebook that was called, "What color is the dress?" If this bypassed you, that's wonderful. If it didn't bypass you, I hope that you have this stored in your memory banks, because it was a dress that was had stripes and different sheer netting material on it. And it was clearly a white dress with gold details. However, many people were being told that it was actually a bluish colored dress. And so there were extensive nonsensical discussions and arguments on various comment threads that were saying, it looks like this. No, it looks like this. And I said at the time that this is clearly perception manipulation. It is not only distraction from more important world events, it was testing the waters. It was putting the finger on the pulse of your quote-unquote collective consciousness to see how malleable is your consciousness. Can you remember what you actually perceived? Or is it easy to tell you after the fact, you didn't actually see a white dress with gold trim, you actually saw a blue dress with black trim? And this is what is going on right now, basically. There is an effort to control your mind and to control your perception. And this is the same battle, the battle that we are fighting, that has ever been waged. It is the battle for your own interior freedom. So no one else can make you free. I cannot make you free, because it is up to you to clear your eyesight, to use your own mind. And when I say mind, I don't necessarily mean the implanted or hacked operating system. Don't I say that almost every week? The idea that your daily waking consciousness is a hacked hacked operating system, if you use verbalized language, that this is not pure insight, and that it leaves you open to those beings that have been oppressing humanity for a very long time. So I will tell you that I have had many intrusive voices on this hacked operating system, and that I think that that is also part of the not only nanoparticles, but the artificial electromagnetic fields that we are subjected to. And I'm not the only person who researches this and writes about it. If I were the only person, you could say, Aurora, I believe that you are insane. Luckily, there's power in social consensus, because there are many people that are now writing about how cell phone towers, Gwen towers, smart meters, and other broadcasters of electromagnetic fields and ELF, extremely low frequency signals, are able to perform what is known as synthetic telepathy. The idea, I always say, telepathy is supposed to happen on a bridge of love, non-technological, and on a bridge of love between two organisms that actually love each other and produce that tone. As I've described in the past, unconditional love is a tone, like a musical note, and when you produce that note, it's like tuning into someone else. And there is currently a network of synthetic telepathy that has been created and is being used. It's a form of exotic technology. It's like saying that the creators of this technology were inspired by technology users who don't live on Earth. They didn't necessarily take a clank metal spaceship and use it here. They reverse engineered what they were given. So now you have to understand that when you or I, when one is perceiving what appears to be a metallic or solid orb or unidentified craft that is doing things that an ordinary plane cannot do in the sky, it might be a technology using space race, or it might be elements of our own military that have been given this exotic technology so that they can use it themselves. However, you must then understand that this is exotic technology being used by the military against its own citizens. The wind was blowing while I was saying that, so I just want to make sure it wasn't distorted. I'm speaking right now about what I am classifying or describing as a soft coup d'etat, a military coup. I believe that our military, and not only the United States, but also that of many other countries on Earth's surface, has been co-opted by non-earthly users of technology. And I'm not speaking now about the incredibly powerful light beings or luminous beings who are more like tiny versions of the sun, like little tiny suns. They, first of all, are totally disinterested in oppressing other consciousnesses or taking slaves or telling people what to do. They have no agenda that is about that at all. Those beings are also so adept that they would not have to stoop to the utilization of clank metal technology and the spraying of actual nanoparticles. If a luminous being, like a light a being that is made of pure light, if for some very, very strange reason they wanted to control and manipulate your mind and your perception, they would reach directly into your mind and your perception. They wouldn't have to use microfibers or nanoparticles or pollute in a very inefficient way the entire atmosphere of Earth with nanoparticles in order to achieve their objectives. So on the one hand, the massive scale, the magnitude of spraying aerosol components throughout the entire upper atmosphere of Earth is so massive, it's so gigantic, that it is hard for a human being to imagine it. However, I will tell you that in terms of technology and sophisticated space races, the idea of a delivery system that is so inefficient that you have to spray the entire surface of the entire planet in order to do what you want to do shows that they are not very sophisticated. And they are also not very adept at hiding what they are doing. Because also, like I said in the past, the nanoparticles stayed mostly at the upper atmosphere. Now the formula of what is being sprayed is intentionally being changed so that it sinks down to lower levels of the atmosphere. And the planes that spray at lower levels, it is also necessary for them to be disguised. However, I'm seeing that not all of these disguises are effective. So, in this broadcast, I am essentially calling upon you as citizens of Earth, as organic, biological, multicellular containers for consciousness connected to the planet and connected to the stellar network. Get your digital cameras, get your telephoto lenses, observe what is actually going on in the sky, because I read a lot of things on message boards and forums on Facebook now of people who are disgusted by the pollution. First of all, they perceive the pollution. Oh, second of all, have I not spoken about this in this episode? The idea that this is taking an extreme toll on human health. Brief pause. There are reports of many, many people being sickened by this. When I say many, many, right now, there are anecdotal reports of people in as far divergent places as the west coast of the United States, the east coast of the United States, Ibiza, Spain, and Anchorage, Alaska. Like many, many places, people reporting many upper respiratory asthma bronchitis problems. There are not yet statistics. However, I can link to some very good research that was done in the UK, and this is for 2015. So this is before the spraying even accelerated in 2016, that correlated increased deaths in Northern Ireland due to dementia and what is termed Spanish flu. And we're talking a huge statistical increase. It was something like 58%, and the researcher correlated it to heavy aerosol spray days when it was visibly, the sun was visibly blocked out. So right now, Earth and the biosphere, when I say the biosphere, I'm talking about all life. This isn't just affecting humans, it's affecting plant life. The microbiosphere, the microbiome, it's affecting animal life, cats, dogs, birds, bats, bees, insects. It's affecting the salmon that swim in the river. It's affecting dolphins. It's affecting all life on this planet. So as I've spoken in the past, how we are undergoing a birth. We're giving birth to a new dimension, a change in consciousness, a change in our physical structure of our bodies. This is what is going on. And I've also said that I believe this is the end game. End game is the term for in chess when there are only a certain number of moves left. And I say that because I see the technology using space races, or the interlopers, the invaders, as no longer trying to even hide what they're doing. They're being very overt, and they are making their bid to take over your minds. This is what this is. Yes, this is an effort at overt mind control. So on many of these forums, people are being disgusted. They are watching these sprays be sprayed. They are feeling their nose and throat burn. They're watching people get sick, or their family members get sick, or themselves get sick. And we'll talk about how to detox. And they're expressing disgust. They don't yet have all of the puzzle pieces. And I keep saying to people, you need to get a telephoto lens and you need to film what is actually emitting these sprays. Because once you do, then you will have all of the puzzle pieces of where do you actually bring this information. Many people have said, who is doing it? Why are they doing it? Why is this? This is beyond mere quote-unquote geoengineering in terms of climate control, like the idea of blocking out or reflecting excessive sunlight so that the Earth's temperature will not raise excessively. I laugh at that ridiculous assertion. This is not about geoengineering in terms of climate control. This is about geoengineering in terms of controlling the biosphere and turning it into something that the technology using space races can inhabit more comfortably, or can utilize as a type of resource. So I know that I've also spoken on previous broadcasts about that old good news, bad news. The good news is you've already been invaded, and it was 10,000 plus years ago. Well, the bad news is that there is right now a false invasion that is being staged. The beings that are revealing themselves soon, they've been here all along. And when I talk about end game, it means that for a very long time they have cunningly remained hidden or behind the scenes while still manipulating events, and now they are not bothering to really remain hidden anymore. And all of this is about to come to its final denouement, like the last scene in a movie where many things are resolved. This is birth of a new dimension. This is when I've been speaking about we are giving birth. We are coming together as consciousness, organic, multicellular human consciousness with many other forms of consciousness and intelligence that are moving at vastly different rates and coming from very different directions. So I've spoken to you about the occupiers of the interstices, the hell realms. The interstice is supposed to be a membrane between worlds of flowing energy that makes you flow from where you are back to the beginning so you start over again. There are some beings that have occupied the interstices and never flowed back to the source. They are like the turds that refuse to flush, and they have been insinuating themselves into the human genetic structure. They're the hackers, hacking your mind. For a long time, they have been using intrusive voices, not technology, but intrusive voices, to interpose themselves and control human behavior. At this point, these malevolent beings have cultivated human earthly technology to the point where it can be utilized for synthetic telepathy rather. And it is possible now for them to technologically insinuate themselves into your consciousness. That's what the transhumanist agenda is. The idea that you will not be thinking your own thoughts. You would be thinking the thoughts of a malevolent artificial intelligence system. And when I say malevolent, I mean that which does not conform to the harmonic structure of consciousness, the energetic patterns as it flows in the cosmos. The great musical score, as I like to say. We're in a symphony, and these are the notes that you are supposed to be playing. This artificial intelligence is malevolent because it is not playing the right notes. It is hoping to make you and everyone else think its own notes, its own music, its own melody, what it wants, which is not necessarily the same as what the cosmos wants you to think. So each one of us is beholden only to the cosmos, only to that source of consciousness that emanated you, only to divine, higher dimensional consciousness, not to a mere lowly creation such as an artificial intelligence network. So all of this, what I'm broadcasting here, this is a call to arms. However, the arms are not guns. People on these internet forums are upset. They see that poisons and toxins are being sprayed. They see their friends and family being sickened. They say, I want to get a missile launcher and shoot down those planes. And I say to you, the best thing that you can do is get a telephoto lens and don't shoot down the planes. Take pictures of them. Take detailed videos of them. Another thing that you can do is there's an app called Flight Tracker, and you can use that in order to correlate a plane that you visually see in the sky with what is their flight number, their origin, and their destination. And you can also, if you have a flight number and you want to know where that flight is flying, you can type that into Google. Just an ordinary Google search with no particular app attached to it, and that can tell you where any flight is on the surface of Earth at any time. These are essential tools for research. The other thing is we need to all share our information. Begin talking about this with other people. Take your own videos, take your own pictures, and share it. Photographic evidence is incredibly powerful because if I said to you, I saw with my eye an invisible plane, and then took a picture of an actual plane, you would say, Aurora, I disbelieve you, and I think you are insane. However, I tell you with my voice, I saw a physical silver plane in the sky. When I took this picture, there was no plane there. And that means I am not insane, and I have photographic evidence of it. And so, too, do many other people. There is a huge power in social consensus. Some people are afraid to even speak about these topics for fear of being labeled as insane. And I will tell you that there is already a concerted effort of denialism to deny that chemtrails exist, to deny that if they do exist, that they are harming or affecting human health at all, and be prepared for, a smear campaign against their existence and against the idea that they're affecting human health or human consciousness. And I bring this up because the local Fox broadcasting station for Central Valley, California, which I spoke about last week as having thousands of upper respiratory people sickened with upper respiratory diseases go to the Central Valley, California emergency room, not this past weekend, but 2 weekends ago, that there was a questionnaire on the Fox News for Central Valley, California Facebook page that said, "Do you think chemtrails are controlling your mind?" So it speaks volumes if the local news broadcaster is running a poll or, taking the pulse, putting its finger in the wind and saying, what do people think? Do people believe this? All right. So it is now absolutely essential for you to arm yourself with real evidence. And let's talk about techniques for staying healthy. So I have been taking chlorella. Chlorella is a single-celled organism that is an algae. It is filled with chlorophyll, where it gets its name chlorella from. And we're also going to use this as a segue into the idea of becoming a light eater, which I've spoken about on many other broadcasts. So the benefit of taking chlorella right now at this moment is that it absorbs heavy metals from the human body and allows them to be harmlessly excreted, and it can cross the blood-brain barrier. So chlorella has been used in helping mine workers to clear their systems of heavy metals such as mercury, lead, and arsenic. And, mercury has actually been found in some of these chemtrail samples. It can certainly be effective in ridding your body of aluminum. And one of the other things you can do is eat cilantro. It is best to combine these two things. Eat cilantro at the same time you're taking chlorella, because cilantro liberates heavy metals from your tissues where they are stored, and chlorella helps to encapsulate those minerals in the intestines so that they are passed out, so that they don't get reabsorbed through the intestine walls. So I found this has been helping me out a lot, eating these two plant-based substances, cilantro and chlorella. You can also right now I'm lucky we are not having a bad spray day in terms of being able to perceive it with my nose. On other days when I really did perceive it with my nose and, my throat, I wore a respirator for VOCs. You can also get some relief with a P95 or N95 respirator. Even though the pore size is not for nanoparticulates, these respirators work in terms of electrostatic charge, getting the tiny particles to be attracted by ionic charge. And you can get an ionic filter in your home. It will take a certain amount out of the body. One of the other things you can do is sun gaze, and I highly, highly recommend this. Not to stare at the sun with your physical eyes, but connect to the sun with your non-physical inner eye and absorb as much sunlight as you possibly can. And I really found that when I filled up my inner energy banks, my inner batteries, with as much sunlight as I could, I felt that I was overwhelming whatever technological invader was trying to come inside of me and totally dismantling it and busting it apart. So this is what this is all about. Your coherency, the coherence of your mind and your energy system in response to a pathogenic invader, in this case, which is nanoparticles that respond to an electromagnetic field. But remember, you create an electromagnetic field naturally around you. This is your toroidal energy field, just like Earth has a magnetosphere. So you are already generating your own energy field, and you can increase that energy field by ingesting sunlight. Let's talk now about becoming a light eater. Spoken about more than 10,000 years ago, before the fall, before our consciousness changed, before our bodies changed and were retrofitted to be able to consume physical substances so that we can physically live in the physical realm, we used to eat nothing but pure light. And when I first got here into this physical body as a human, I was trying to eat nothing but pure light. I didn't know why it wasn't working for me, and my body was so skinny and I was so weak all the time. And I had to learn about eating physical food, okay? What I've learned very recently is that chlorella has an amazing capacity to generate oxygen and to create complete proteins. Basically, I read anecdotal stories about times in Japan when chlorella was used because there were famines. And one of the things about chlorella is that it has a very, very durable cell wall. It's actually like a triple wall that makes it very hard to digest. So if you just ate it, you would get minimal protein from it. But if you take the chlorella and you dry it and subject it to different things that will break the cell wall, like smashing it, it then makes it possible for your body to utilize those proteins. So in times of famine in Japan, people found that they could collect their urine and use it to cultivate in giant vats this algae and then turn it into a food substance that they could eat. And researching all of this helped me to understand that there is a vital component missing to us becoming light eaters, and that is chlorophyll. That we need to have our alimentary tract, instead of being home to several pounds of probiotic gut bacteria, that, as it presently is, that helps us to digest our physical food. I started to sense and remember what this body did in the past and could do in the future in changing the microorganism structure from the present probiotics to organisms such as chlorella. So what I'm giving you now is a type of mental program, like software for your organic computer, a new idea. Instead of just saying you're gonna one day eat light, let's say this: what if your intestines, instead of housing the microbiome that it presently houses, what if they housed a lot of chlorella? And instead of having chlorella come in through your mouth every day and come out through your anus every night, what if it went inside of you and didn't have to come out? What if we were able to connect directly to the sun using our third eye, and then we had a circulatory system for light? Because, of course, if you have chlorophyll in the dark inner reaches of your intestines, that chlorophyll cannot absorb light and photosynthesize. However, what if, just as we have a circulatory system for oxygen that brings oxygen from the external atmosphere to all of the internal cells and where they need it, what if we had something similar for light? A circulatory system for light that when we exposed ourselves to the sun and ingested and breathed in that light, that it went to the chlorella or chloroplasts that occupy our intestines, and that those chlorella has the capacity in one day to quadruple, to make 4 little baby versions of itself, and that the chlorella or chloroplasts in our own intestines and alimentary tract could be an internal farm, constantly producing both fat and protein and carbohydrates, which is exactly what chlorella produces, and then emitting those substances into our bloodstream so that we can be sustained by them. And also, chlorella emits a startling amount of oxygen, so much so that it actually has antioxidants in its own cell structure so that it is not harmed by the amount of oxygen that it is being subjected to. Remember, plants need the opposite. They need carbon dioxide, not oxygen. So what a beautiful partnership it would be to ingest a tiny microorganism that emits all of the oxygen that we require for our daily activities, and at the same time we can transmit the light to that cellular structure that it needs for its daily nutritional needs. And I'm bringing this up because I've spoken about how we are in transition. When I first got here in 2001, I thought that I was simply in a new realm where I could apply these new rules and have the capacity to just ingest the sunlight directly. So back then I didn't understand that we were in transition or how long the transition would take. So now I am much more, accommodating and understanding that myself and the planet and everyone who is here, we are all transitioning our consciousness from this objective materialist viewpoint and experience of being dense physical matter into an experience of being less dense, making it to the next level, and sharing with you these concepts of eating chlorella. So what if What if your ureters were redirected, and instead of passing urine out of your body, your urine was used as a vat to grow the chlorella in the same way that the ancient Japanese people would grow it externally in a vat? What if you could have this interior farm for nutrients that is totally consensual and benevolent to both organisms, and that this allows you to be no longer completely dependent upon a planet for your food source, because this would allow you to create your own microclimate, to have all of your nutritional needs met, and eventually to leave this world with all of the resources that you need to sustain you on your journey. So again, I'm sharing this with you as one aspect of restructuring. We restructure our genes by considering new thoughts and new ideas and weaving them into our belief system. I spoke in the past about how our DNA is not just a template for the shape of your nose or the shape of your toes or your eyes. The DNA is a bridge of light between the world of possibilities and probabilities and what can happen and the world of experienced realities. And it is your belief system. What you believe is possible. If you do not believe it is possible to eat pure sunlight, you can't be on those timelines. I've just given you some of the connective integument of the mind, the connective tissue that will help you to be able to consider that it's not that outlandish, that you, in your present format, could be transformed into a light eater and no longer be dependent, and to consider the change in your life that would mean. Just in my daily life, if I no longer had to do food buying, food prep, and food cleaning up after, we as humans devote an enormous amount of time to the procurement, creation, and ingestion of food, as well as sitting on the toilet and all of the other aspects of metabolism. And our lives would be much more streamlined if we didn't have to do these things. And our economy would be much more streamlined if we didn't have to do these things. And I also spoke about how we would no longer domesticate both plants and animals to be our food sources, so it would be much more respectful to the trajectory of consciousness of these other forms of life. We would not have to grow something merely for our own nutritive needs. That thing could grow into what it wants to grow so that it is the greatest version of itself. So I share these ideas as, just like in a garden, first you prepare the soil so that later on you can plant a seed and grow a plant. This is preparing your consciousness and your mind for the idea of being able to transform into a higher dimensional state. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey. Please continue as we prepare for a birth of a new dimension.